as to what's going on with individuals' tax and transaction taxes in South Africa, and it's updated to 25 October 2011, and it's going to need to be updated again very soon, because one will soon see that some of the assurances made in the budget speech last year in October won't materialize when it comes to 22 February. Again, you can Twitter, and again, please can I invite you to the webinar dealing with the update on this 15 minutes after the Minister of Finance stopped speaking on the 22nd of February. Just send an email you'd like to participate to g.yamisa@ru.ac.za. And you'll get the update of this with all the graphics and the new show. On top of that, please, you will not have a lot of the graphs and things that are in this presentation. They will be emailed to you by PDF in the next day or so that you can look at them in color. But if we tried to print them all, I'm sure we'll push up the SAPI share price. That's why we didn't do it. Right. Gone maybe. Okay, that's one side of looking at it. The question is, what did he represent? And some people say it was just a load of bull. When one looks at the president at the moment, the president is actually wrestling with something. And he's saying, you know, how many dependents are there in South Africa? And when we talk about 50 or so dependents of the presidents, we're actually talking about 50 million dependents. Because out of the 50 million people, there are 1.4 million disabled, 3% of the population. 2 million AIDS orphans, 4% of the population. Then 10 million children who require a child grant with 100,000 new applications a month. That's that block. Now, we've been paying for them for some time, and we can afford that. I'll show you now. Then there are 8 million kids whose parents can afford them and do pay for them. They represent another 16% of the population. And then there are 2 million geriatrics. Okay? Fortunately, they join the system as fast as they fall off the other side. So that takes you up to about 50% of the population. And there we have lived for some time. The problem that Zuma is experiencing at the moment and fighting with at the moment is that the 10 million under 18s on child grants are turning 18 at the rate of 1 million a year. And they are joining the ranks of the unemployed, 4 million and counting, and the economically inactive, that's those who haven't applied for a job within the last 30 days, that's another 20% of the population. And the over 18 population is growing at an incredible rate with no jobs, but they have a vote and a cell phone. And they're worried about that because that's the lot that can vote them out next year. And that's where they are seeking to perform. And that's why we get all these 20 times that we hear compatriots in the president's address last Thursday. He's trying to inspire that 15 million, that group of 15 million people who are starting to get angry. The employed people, well, 9 million live below tax threshold, don't pay any tax at all. And to pay tax, we leave it to about 4 million taxpayers, of which 3.5 million earn below 500,000 per year, the middle working class. But when we look at how many wealthy people there are, it is a mere 150,000 taxpayers who earn above 500,000 rands a year. That tiny little red block up the top. And that's what's expected to pay for the whole lot. And what we've got is we might have the most powerful popular leader we've ever had, and he can say, Juju, you're time to grow up, boy. And I've got a new partner in China, you know. But the question is, who's going to pay? And if one looks at the regeneration of South Africa, that was supposed to be the job for investigating by Trevor Manuel. But another thing that we find is that we have all sorts of economic policies, but everybody pulling in different directions. We don't know who's who in the zoo. Is it Patel? Is it Manuel? Is it Gordhan? If one takes Manuel's paper from 11th of November last year, He says too much is not promoting either economic growth or jobs. He says there are three trends undermining South Africa: a public sector wage bill out of hand, low levels of investment, falling education standards. Well, we know that. Tell us something we don't know that. We don't need 27 commissioners in the national planning exercise to tell us that. He continues, South Africa's IT sucks. It's getting better. But not as bad as the healthcare system, where 42 million South Africans out of 50 million are reliant on the current healthcare system, and 8 million only have access to any form of medical aid. So this stuff gets so depressing it might as well be brought to you by Leonard Cohen. Okay, so let's see where we can go from there. Right. Now here's some good news. Let's go back to Mbeki days. Mbeki, Manuel Ramos. They said, run South Africa on no deficit at all. And we laughed about it and joked because when Maria Ramos went off into Transnet, Trevor was on his own and the deficit started to grow. You see what happens when you leave the male in the family in charge of things. Okay, we start borrowing. It wasn't that. It was obviously trading circumstances changed and we went post-Polokwane. But the big thing that we've got to take from the early part is that we didn't borrow in the 3 years leading up to 2009. And that has left us in a position where we're sitting better than most of the world today. So the wisdom of Manuel Ramos and Mbeki was purely that they didn't spend money, and they adopted the view that until we know how to spend the money and get bang for our buck, well, we're not spending money. And that is fortunately what has saved us in where we're going today. Manuel, on the other hand, did not ever think we'd fall into recession. In 2009, it was not till June where we actually fell in the recession, and we said to Trevor, we're in recession, help us. He said, don't talk to me, talk to Pravin Gordhan, I'm no longer Minister of Finance. He got out of being Minister of Finance 30 days before we reached the recession. So when one looks at it, we say, right, well, what did Pravin Gordhan have to say about it? And Pravin Gordhan is a very good card player, because he said, look, we've been saving for this. I've inherited the worst deficit ever from Manuel in 2010. Remember, Gordhan's first budget was 2 years ago now. He said, if for 2011 we can recover, and the first signs of recovery were there on budget day 2 years ago. He said, if we can just hold our own in 2011, we'll recover the situation, we'll be all right. I'm not changing the game plan. And that's an important thing to take into what you're looking at now. The game plan hasn't changed yet. And Gordhan was perfectly right, because when he got to last year's budget, he saw there's the global credit crunch, and we were sitting pretty. So he said, got it right in my first year as Minister of Finance.